Future respiratory therapist, what are you doing to differentiate yourself? Grab a beverage, grab some popcorn, enjoy the show. You don't want to miss this one. RT Talk episode 5 starts now. What's up, future respiratory therapist? We're back with another episode of RT Talk, and today I'm joined by Eric Harter. Okay, now before we get into the interview and before we actually welcome him officially, I would like to remind you, as the watchers, it's on you. You have the opportunity to comment. Ask Eric questions. We'll come back and I'll make sure he gets those questions. Maybe we'll have him back on another episode and he can answer those questions for you at a later date. Hit the subscribe button if not already subscribed. And if you love what he's saying, smash that like button. That's the only way we get the feedback that we know that we're giving you the content that you're here for. So having said that, Eric Harter, thanks for being here.
Hey man, appreciate it, Joe. Our coach, looking forward to it.
Joe's fine. Whatever comes out of your mouth easiest is fine. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Eric. What led you to reaching out to me about this?
Yeah, so I am a respiratory therapist, 20 plus years, and I feel like I've worked in every aspect of respiratory care. I was the kid that had his own, like, what do you call it, lawn service, right? Push the lawnmower around, cut the old lady's tree down, always just an entrepreneur at heart. And so even if I was, I always say, even if I was like, cardiothoracic surgeon cracking chests and sewing their hearts together all day long, people call me doctor, I'd have said, I'm out. I'm like a monkey in a cage. I got to get out of here. So I've always loved, understanding how business works and understanding customers and why they buy and how they buy and how to try to differentiate yourself as a service, as a business. So those things are super, are interesting to me. And then in addition to that, respiratory is cool because, I always tell everybody, even on your worst day, you're helping somebody breathe. And I don't want to be a company that sells overpriced staplers for $100 and when you don't need it. I certainly like the fact that we service nursing home patients and hospice patients. And I also worked in pediatrics. And so I've always said some of the sweetest, kindest people in the world are pediatric care people, nurses, respiratory doctors, whatever. And then also hospice. People that work in hospice are some of the sweetest, kindest people in the world. So I'm proud that I'm in this field, in the medical field. And I'm glad that I'm not selling boats that you don't need.
Well, I mean, boats aren't bad. I mean, I wouldn't mind having one, but I think you're right. I think
I'm out on a boat.
I get your message. What you're saying there is that you're in a field where you have an opportunity to impact people. And I think that's key. Now, you notice while you were talking, I'm writing. This is the way this flows. You talk, you're going to do the majority of the talking. I'll write down some key concepts that I think really stand out. And then we recap at the end and give you the final word. So thank you again for being here. Let's talk just a minute here, just here, kind of give everybody a rundown. You're also involved with telehealth, so related to respiratory therapy. How does that work?
So everybody in the world is doing telehealth now, right? It's like go on the Google, it's up there, right? Yeah. Google and telehealth and the virus and the whole deal. So as basically everybody wants to do telehealth. And as I've watched all these telehealth companies come out there, here we are, like sometimes we're the redheaded stepchild, respiratory. And so we've been left out of this equation in some ways. But guess what? There's no more important thing than when a patient can't breathe, right? So nursing and physicians have these doc in a box or whatever. So typically, for example, like a telehealth service in a nursing facility, right? Typically, it's a doc in a box. So you have a patient who's short of breath or, can't, whatever, fluid overload or whatever, some wound issue. They can get a doc on there, but there's a charge for that, right? But then there's a retainer charge. Typically, well, I won't even say, but it's a hefty number. So having to have that service. So so how it differentiates with respiratory is if you have a doc in a box and they have would you get out of here?
If she's gonna walk by, tell her to come say hi. If you're gonna walk by, you gotta come say
distracting
hi.
the hell out of me. Get out of here.
Come here.
God. Come here, Denise. Come here.
Come here, Denise.
She got it. She like a child. She has to get all,
Yeah.
and then.
Hey.
How are you, Denise?
How you doing?
I'm doing
Oh,
well.
she can't hear you. I got the earphones on.
I can't see.
All right, can you go in your office?
Bye.
Sorry.
No, it's
Sorry
all right.
about,
This is
sorry
fun.
about that.
Talking.
I get distracted. Anyways, she likes to distract. So, so basically, if you have a doc in a box in a nursing home, they don't really know anything about there's about 2 million different BiPAP CPAPs out there. So to have an RT know that, hey, the O2 adapter is not in line, the doctor might not necessarily see that. They're certainly not going to be able to have to figure out, we have a million different types of PAPs. Right now, I can go pull one off the shelf and I probably 99% couldn't turn it on. Which, not a good thing. But the point is to have a respiratory therapist that knows about respiratory devices, respiratory issues, respiratory related things that pop up is very, very important, right? And so, so basically how it works is very specific to hospice patients. So a hospice patient, let's just take an ALS patient. Worst disease pretty much out there. An ALS patient has an issue with whatever, their machine, they're breathing that day, so on and so forth, or a chronic lung patient's having an issue with, what have you. And so typically the caregiver is like the daughter or whatever. And so a captive audience there. And so they contact the hospice company and we shoot them a link. We pop on, you get a live respiratory therapist in your face. Unfortunately, if I was on the call, this would be the face that you would have coming at you. Well, that's not a good look. I mean, I'm not, Joe handsome, so anyways, point is I would be able to get my eyeballs on the patient and say, oh, listen, the O2 adapter is out of line. Let me tell you what, unfortunately, we get calls all the time, whatever, patients having issue, went back to the hospital, what have you. Do you know how many times that they simply don't have the oxygen adapter in line, right? So I've had, or they put the full face mask over the cannula in the nursing home, or they just say you can't get BiPAP, or BiPAP doesn't come with oxygen, or just simple things that if we see, oh, nasal cannula is underneath the mask, it's not connected, it's disconnected, whatever it is, that fixes that problem right away, right? And so we don't charge any ongoing retainer or anything like that. It's a very, very small service fee, but it's separate from the financials, separate from the business part of it. I love being involved in a business that solves a problem even before people even know that it's available, right? So for years, we've done this over the phone. And if you can't fix the problem over the phone, let me tell you, some of the hospice families or patients are like, hey, just get out here. That's all. That's what I need you to do. Just come to my house and fix this problem, because they're irritated and they have every right to be irritated. And these patients need to be cared for. We're just providing a new tool to be able to fix that problem right now. And especially in remote areas, or, many of these DME companies, durable medical equipment companies, will have, so-and-so RT as a per diem, right? And so, oh, we hired this per diem and they're going to fix all our needs. Well, that per diem doesn't want to be on call 24 hours a day. I'll tell you that right now. And many times when you call, and this is only through trial and error. I've tried to staff every which way you could imagine. And if you call that RT at 2 o'clock in the morning, they don't answer the phone. They're not interested in it. They're not going to go, I got that, whatever it is. And so to be able to get telehealth out there fixes a lot of problems. So it's been fantastic. We're rolling it out in many states now, and it's just been great. So.
Yeah, I like this concept because I think you touched on a lot of things there, really. But really, what it all boils down to is that telehealth has bridged the gap. Because I think it feels like, at least, you go to these acute setting hospitals and there's all these RTs running around. And then you leave that acute setting hospital, and then the level of RT RT support drastically falls off.
Yeah.
And so it's like, in a way, it's like, okay, you're working with the care team, the nurses, the docs, everybody there inside the hospital, and we're an important piece of that puzzle. And then it's like it moves out, and it seems like, oh, like suddenly that piece isn't needed anymore. That doesn't make sense. People at the home health, at the homes, the families you mentioned, I think you're exactly right. The comfort in being able to get somebody to fix a problem over an iPad is even better than having to wait 45 minutes for them to get to your house.
Oh yeah.
And so
yeah.
I think it's a wonderful avenue. It's one that I don't have a lot of expertise in, but I'm learning about it, and I'm glad you're here today and you shared that with us, because that's super important. You talked a little bit about, and we've talked before. We've talked on the phone, and so kind of have a preface to this conversation.
Yeah, I stalked you down.
Stalked me down.
Yeah, went on to Google, found the Respiratory Coach. Boom, I'm on the podcast. Nailed it.
And you can stalk me down too. All you have to do is send me an email. Respiratory Coach.
That's right. And listen, same day. So one of the reasons we call we have two separate businesses. One's a DME and disposables part. One's a respiratory services part. Long story, we won't go into it. But however, is Rapid CPAP is so the name of our DME company. But because we do everything rapid, nobody wants to wait. We pick up the phone, we take care of the patient, and so my man Joe, same day, a couple hours, I sent the email out. Boom, let's go. When are we gonna fire this up? Is what he said. So
yeah,
hard to find.
You said something in the first conversation we had, and it's so funny because yourself and other people that reach out and we have these really good conversations. And we were having that conversation. I think somebody may have alluded to that. And you said something. It's about what your quote. You said there is a lack of responsible RT conversations. What makes you think that, and what do you want to say about that?
So are you talking about? Explain that a little better.
Well, for me, when you said it, it stood out to me because I felt like you were saying like there's this big community of respiratory therapy out there, this big respiratory therapy community. But it didn't seem like from when you said it that day, it didn't seem like you were saying like there's all these RTs out there and all these great ideas and all this ability and opportunity, but there's not enough conversations happening between respiratory therapists that are valuable conversations, responsible conversations.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's not a lot, like I said, obviously we use these, been on a few podcasts, and we even have our own podcast, respiratory podcast. And I'm just trying to create that conversation, picking people's brains and talking about our industry and talking about, now we're down the rabbit hole a little bit. We're in the nursing home and hospice, specifically. But yeah, I mean, just getting in front of people, there's not a lot, right? So is exact reason I'm on with you. I have not found, it's difficult to find and to get into these type of conversations.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to put that up here actually, and I'm going to shorthand it for time's sake. Lack of convos. We can do that. But yeah, and I think you're right. Here's what I found, Eric. I find that the more I talk to people about respiratory therapy, the more I learn, the more they learn, the more I feel like the more everybody gets more on fire. I feel like passion grows from being able to have an educated, knowledgeable, responsible conversation with other people in the same field. Because I mean, let's be real here. We're all really, at some point in time, just about probably every respiratory therapist's career, at some point in time, they have either completely hated the situation they were in, complained all the time about the situation they were in, but never did anything about it, unless maybe they got out and went into another realm, right? But what I'm saying is that when you can talk about this, you can find people that you can bounce ideas off of, then it's like your brain just opens up to a whole new level of opportunity. And I like that. And I think if we had more conversation, well, I'll say that in a little bit. Anyways, so yeah, that's where I think I agree with you 100%. There is definitely not enough conversations happening out there, and we got to do something about that.
Yeah, I agree. You know, let me be honest with you, man. Like, so when I'm originally from Southern California and moved out. I've been in Philadelphia for about 20 years. Another long story. Nobody's ever done that in the history of the world. Moved from sunny Southern California to Philadelphia. Long story. Nobody's done it. So I'm the first one. But when I was working, I was a student at this hospital, and then they liked me and they hired me, right? And because I was excited about what I was doing, I was, you know, I got the lab coat on, or, you know, I've got the X-ray. They probably don't even have the, you know, I remember putting the X-ray out there, slamming that thing in the glass, you know. I didn't know no idea what I was looking at. But I thought it was fun and it was interesting. I mean, I was a bartender as a student, so I was like, well, this is definitely not serving drinks. This is fun. This is interesting. And there was, you know, codes and stuff happening and breathing treatments coming out my eyeballs. But as I kind of worked there, and I was there for a couple years, I started to notice some of the people are just burnt out, you know, and they were just like, just give me the treatments, you know, give me the beeper and give me the treatments and that's it. You know, and I'll be like, I'll take the ICU. And they're like, knock yourself out, kid, go ahead. So, and I can understand that, right? Like I started, the first business I started in 2007, 2008 as a staffing company because I was tired of working with these drunken drug addicts that they were dragged in from every staffing company that would just show up, give me the treatments and make a bunch of money. So I was like, man, if I just hire some friends and some people that I know, good people, whatever, we could, you know, do something here. So, you know, just doing those treatments, I thought, man, you gotta really differentiate yourself, right? So, so that's kind of been my call, where I kind of saw some of the writing on the wall of, if you're just in a hospital, and keep in mind, there's some hospitals that I have never worked at that people are like I said, stitching the hearts back together, cracking, doing brain surgery, respiratory therapists doing the whole thing. But there are a lot of hospitals where, here, do the breathing treatments. Where I would staff because nobody wanted to work, right? So there was places where they'd say, bring us the ventilator. You go to the ICU and hand them the vent and walk away, right? Because that's the way they did it. And I remember being like, oh, you don't, all right, well, okay, you know, stuff like that. But the writing on the wall was, for me, is this is non-sustainable. This is non-sustainable if you don't differentiate yourself as somebody that can be of value, right? So my passion and my desire is to create and to have a company that differentiates itself from other companies we're willing, now of course we're not perfect, but willing to do what is needed to be done. And so that's really important as a respiratory therapist, as a business, as a human being, is to carve out your own value and to really differentiate yourself from the pack. Went on a tangent.
Woo! But I like it. I'm going to tease these through 4 or 5 minutes right here. So yeah, good stuff right there. That non-sustainable, you know, oh my gosh, you're exactly right. That's, if we were to intentionally stay focused on breathing treatments, SDs, IBR, that's what, if we intentionally stay in that realm as our bread and butter, it's not sustainable. It's not, we'll be replaced.
Oh yeah. I say that all the time. You know, and be honest, like if I didn't have the respiratory background and all that, and I understand the value in that, but if I'm just the CEO of Hospital X and I'm just paying attention and I'm looking and I'm trying to increase my margin and I'm trying to cut my costs, and I see respiratory therapists sitting in a department, because I'll be 100% honest with you. I worked staffing, before I started my own staffing company, I worked for staffing companies. There was a place not too far from here that there was 4 people on days. We watched 3 full-length movies during the shift. No joke. So if I was the CEO and I came in that door and I seen 4 dummies watching 3 full-length movies, you're out. Right. So I would look to replace with out here they call them LPNs. I don't know what they call them in Texas and California. They call them LVNs. But if it's just breathing treatments, I would have them do the breathing treatments, and then I would actually set the respiratory department on fire so that no respiratory therapist could go back to it. And then I'm going to create a bunch of enemies. But the point is, I would put those respiratory therapists in the ICU to develop those relationships. I worked as a traveler years and years and years ago, right? They put me, it was during one of the big staffing crisis, I think 2005 or something. And I was working at pediatric ER here in Philly, and they didn't have any staff, so they couldn't get any nurses. They're like, well, hey, let's hire anybody. The respiratory therapist, come on. So I went in there, and they didn't even know what to do with me, really, because they would just call respiratory to come down and give a treatment if a vent came in, whatever it is. Now they have their own delegated RT. So I sat there, I was doing 12s or whatever, and I said, they were like, well, if you want to go listen to everybody's lungs, whatever. And I'm like, bump that. I'm not sitting here for 12 hours. I'm gonna intubate myself, and just so I can get out of here. But the point, so what I did was, and I like to have a good time and all that stuff. Who wants to be with that salty old respiratory person that here they come, here goes, Larry, he's the worst. Look at him, he's like dragging the dog to work. So I always wanted to try to, have fun, do the right things, care for the patient, but have a good time, joke and all that. So I developed a lot of friendships in that ER. And I also did a lot of stuff. I would hold for sutures. I would hold for IVs. I would take kids over to CAT scan. I would bring them back. I'd help. I mean, they would have me do all kinds of stuff because I had the time.
Right.
But then by that they took my recommendations because we were doing what the heck was that? Nitric. We were doing nitric transport with these little kids, these little babies. They would have me go, and they never had an RT go in the ambulance before. They were like, well, Eric will go. He does everything. Give him the mop. So I would go out on transport with the transport team, which we did a lot of really great work. Actually, this sounds a little corny, but there was a kid that I don't really tell the story, but there was a kid that I took his, I don't know, this sounds a little creepy. I took a piece of the ambu bag and I put it over my door. I had that since 2004.
Wow.
3, whatever. I put it over there because I know, this sounds silly, but I know that if I wasn't on that transport, that kid would have died. So there's a kid out here in Philadelphia, and I put it over my door, and every time we feel like we move offices, which is a good thing because we're growing and the offices keep getting bigger and the rents keep getting larger. But the point is, I put that over my door so that I remember that it has to be about patients, and it has to be about service, and it has to be about care. Now, of course, business is largely about money. It is, and it has to be profitable and all that. But we can challenge ourselves to be reminded that this is about patients, and these are people that we're going to be someday. I already told my wife, don't put me in the nursing. Just go ahead. Just open the back door. Put me in the garage. So, but the point is, we're all going to be in this situation. We act like we're not, but we are in some.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
For everybody watching this right now, y'all can see how and why I had Eric join us here. You can sit around and talk to this guy for days, or at least I can. So one more thing here, and then we're going to wrap it up. But I get this question a lot, and students always want to know what you mentioned it earlier. You talked about differentiating yourself. Every student right now who's about to graduate this May, they're going to be looking for jobs. What about help them a little bit in the interview process? What's some things they could do? What are your thoughts on interviewing for students?
Yeah. So I love students and I love new grads because they aren't old and salty. they're still excited about it. They're fresh. Now, trust me, we've had some new grads that have been terrible.
Sure.
But over the years, since 2008, I've staffed or employed over 100 different people, and I've had countless hundreds of interviews. And as a respiratory therapist, I get it. I understand. I know. Here's what I'm begging people to do. Differentiate yourself. I'm so tired of the nonsense. First of all, they come in wearing whatever. Many. Now we have great employees, and I've had people with me for years and years and years. And we've also had people that were the worst, and that's the truth. So point is, you want to differentiate yourself. Come in with a smile. Come in with a cup of coffee. Literally, there's ideas that you can just go to Google and interview ideas, how to differentiate yourself. Bring somebody a cup of coffee, bring them a donut, a book, your favorite book. Call them up and flip the script. I like to say this: hey, I've heard that you guys are hiring, or I'm really hearing some things about your company, your hospital, your home care, whatever it is. And it sounds really exciting. I'd like to come and just tour your building, tour your facility, maybe go out with one of your therapists for a day. I just want to see what you guys are doing. It sounds really interesting. Somebody called me and said that, I'd be like, what? So, and these kids, and they don't realize the power that they have to differentiate themselves by doing small, simple things, smiling through the phone when they're talking to somebody, going personal, being a little bit vulnerable. Don't go overboard, and spill out everything, but be vulnerable, smile, have a positive mindset. Don't tell your employer or future employer about all the terrible employment experiences that you've had. Don't do that, but I think the market, you just want to do what nobody else is doing. And if you differentiate yourself, you'll be able to get into any position. And I don't say this in an arrogant way, but I really feel like if I needed to go get a respiratory therapy job, I could get one today if I needed to. And if we're not hiring. Now you told me that I can't do it, so I will do it. I will find a way to do it. Now you've irritated and challenged me to the point where I'm going to find a way. I'm going to wait. I'm going to bring you breakfast. I'm going to sit outside your department door, and I'm going to hand you breakfast and say, hey, I'm just, still wanted to let you know I'm still interested in this job. I'd love to be able to have a conversation with you. Have a great day. Can you imagine the hiring person? So there's lots of ways, and you can let your mind go and go and go and go. Now, don't find out their home address and sit in their bushes. Don't do that. Don't sneak up on them at night, with the mask on. You don't do that. But there's lots of ways that you can differentiate yourself. And I beg you to do that. Just do it. And then also, if you differentiate yourself, try to sustain that. Like, be a positive person at work. I always say this too. We say, as soon as people are about 3 weeks to a month before they come out of their shell, right, as a new employee. And then if they do something silly or say something silly or whatever, something like, oh, there you are. That's nice to meet you. Yeah. Now I get to see who you really are. So. Yeah,
and that's really good advice. And I like the idea of, it just seems like it's almost like a robotic motion. If everybody comes in, if you, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Differentiate yourself the way Eric said, I think is key. Find one small way, like he stated, and it's going to go a long ways, because otherwise all your resumes look the same. You're all dressed beautifully. Well, maybe, hopefully, you're all going to say the same right answers. What are you going to do if you don't get along with a colleague? All the answers are going to be the same. And so you got to find that way. And so I think that's great advice. I love the comic approach to it. I think before you mentioned maybe if somebody was a toilet paper your door, you'd be like, hired.
Yeah. And I could care less about a resume. Denise looks at the resume. She's with me, every interview we do. But I don't look at that. It's a connection. It's like hey, do I believe you are who you say you are? And another thing I think is a really thing, like that vulnerability, like we're all putting on and all this type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
it's fun to be who you are and be professional and everything, but people want to laugh and want to have a good time and want to enjoy their work.
Right.
85% of people out there, look at the statistics, 85% of people not dislike their job. I've heard 85% of people hate their job. That is death. That's terrible. You shouldn't be in that type of position. So it's okay to be vulnerable and say, I would even say, hey, forgive me if you messed up and said something different or whatever, or we want to say, you know what, forgive me. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm excited about this. And I mean, you're making a connection. You have to make a connection with the person that's interviewing you.
Yeah. So as a graduate student coming out looking for their very first job, should they walk in with I need to make sure this person knows what I'm doing? Or do you respect more the student that says, hey, I'm here to learn as much as I can. I don't know it all. And that type of vulnerability, you respect that greater than the one who acts like they got it all together?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you already know the answer to that. I'm sure that's something you preach all the time. But yeah, I mean, just be like, hey, I don't know. I had a guy that I've worked with for years and years. He finally came to work for me. And he still has that approach. I just want to make sure I do everything right.
Nice.
I want to make sure I'm doing it correct. I want to make sure that we're doing your program. And that's so refreshing. A hard work ethic, never be late, not even literally, if you are 1 minute late, I'll interview you out of respect, but I will never hire you. I won't. Nice. Because if you can't even show up to the interview on time, so there's some hard no's for me. But yeah, I think just a good work ethic, somebody who's excited, who's positive. I mean, these are all really hard things to find. But in this sea, and I'm not just saying respiratory therapists, I'm talking about employment across the board. In this sea of mediocrity, be somebody who stands out, please.
Nice.
Us employers are begging you to do that because we're bored. Yeah. We don't care about
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I heard somebody one time, they were going to go interview for a job and they made a video. So they didn't submit a resume. They made a video and emailed it. And
I'm telling you, man, especially this day and age.
Yeah.
It's almost like I want to go out and try to get a job just to see if I can get them.
I'm sure you can get one.
I'm going to apply to be the assistant coach. Wait till you're going to see me in your bushes tonight with a mask on.
Well, you got to have a mask on. That's still mandated.
Oh, yeah. My man.
All right. So here we go. We've come to the point where I'm going to do a recap real quick. Just remind everybody, what have we heard over the last, what has it been, about 40 minutes here? Yeah, about 30 minutes here. So let's just remind it. Eric said, smile through the phone. And Eric, I love the fact that you said this. That's a big statement. People fail to understand that the tone of your voice reflects the mood of your face. It just does. And so just by smiling, even on the phone, you project kindness, happiness, positivity. And, it's not the only way, but it's damn sure the best way.
Sure.
It's going to get you and lead you to more success rather than not. I love the fact that Eric said he burned down the respiratory therapy department.
Burn it down. Sorry.
Get rid of it.
Couple people gonna die today.
I think we did enough talk about the non-sustainability. I kind of already went into this, but I think it's right. As RTs, we got to start differentiating ourselves as a profession to remain sustainable instead of being looked at as being able to be gotten rid of. Dispensable. That's the word I'm looking for. Differentiate yourself. We've said this, he's harped on this. I think we get the point from that. Thank you for that. There's too many lack of conversations happening with respiratory therapists, among respiratory therapists, amongst our community. And I promise each and every one of you watching this right now. And I got so much joy out of talking to Eric the first time we met. It was just a solid, I don't know, what was it, 40, 45 minutes? But it was solid conversation. And it just sparks your interest. I've never cared so much about telehealth and CPAP and home health, but he lit that fire for me just by showing me that he has the same passion for his customers that I have for mine. We're just playing in two different games. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's still all back to humanity and the patients And we got to have those. This is one of my biggest tips for new grads is that when you go out and get your job, you seek out people who challenge you in conversations. Don't sit around talking about The Bachelor, or I don't even know if that's still a show or not, but whatever. Or watching, every department, Fox News, CNN, wherever part of the region you're in, it's on the TV. Turn that crap off and talk to your colleagues. It's promise you it will lead you to a happier, more positive, more fulfilling career. Solve problems, right? This is what we do. We find a problem, we solve a problem. This is what the respiratory therapy was actually founded on, was how do I make this mask work with this device? And we used to put pieces together, solve a problem. Telehealth is that new tool in Eric's arena that he's capitalizing on to help solve a problem, to bring better care to patients out there in the world. He said nothing more important than breathing. Okay, nothing more important than breathing. So when that patient gets home and they can't breathe, they're looking for somebody to help and to be able to respond to that, which is a service that Eric is providing. I think it's a great, great thing. I'm going to come back to this in just a second. You guys know what I say, average is easy, right? So don't be it. Absolutely don't be it. It's not okay. And then Eric started this conversation off with maybe the most profound comment of the day. And he said, even on your worst day, you're still helping people breathe. And if you ever have a merch line, that's your shirt right there.
No, go ahead. That's yours. Take it. I'm out on the merch.
So Eric, I'll give you the final word, and I give you the opportunity to tell people how they can contact you if they want to reach out.
Well, I think Joe, you did a great job on the podcast. I think probably I did a better job today. Would probably be slam dunk. Just wanted to get that straight away. Just kidding.
You're perfect.
But yeah, so I mean, I'm happy to have conversations with people. You can get me on LinkedIn. It's Eric Harter, as you can see on the little shady dial there, Harter. And I'd be happy to chat with anybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Eric, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your words with the rest of the FRT community.
My man. Thanks, Coach.
All right. Take care. In the meantime, guys, go be great.